Good morning and welcome to the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers Annual General Meeting. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees will remain muted for the duration of the session. Everyone should have received a copy of the AGM package, which was sent out via email. It can also be found in the handout section on your toolbar, as well as on the OSPE website on the AGM and elections page. The floor will be open to questions prior to the vote on each motion and during the member question period towards the end of the meeting. There are three ways to ask a question. First was by submitting your question along with your registration prior to the AGM. There will be two options to ask a question live. First is through our question tab in your control panel. Please submit your question via the question box. OSPE staff will retrieve all questions and read them out loud to the chair. We ask that you are succinct and respect that there are others in attendance who wish to be heard. Please ask only one question at a time. If you would prefer to ask your question verbally using your own microphone, please select the Raise Your Hand button. Staff will introduce you and unmute your microphone. Again, individuals will only be allowed to ask one question at a time. With respect to casting your votes on motions, once we call for a vote, a polling pop-up will appear on your screen and you will click either in favor or opposed to the motion. The results will be shown on the screen and the poll operator will advise the chair of the live vote results. Once you have voted, the polling pop-up will disappear. Moving and seconding a motion will be done through the question tab on your control panel. If your connection is dropped, please try reconnecting using your registration link. If your screen is frozen, please try refreshing your screen. To change your personal view of the webinar, you may use the gray bar to adjust the presentation to video view. Without further delay, it is now my pleasure to introduce the President and Chair of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, Réjean Amy.
Good morning, and again, welcome to the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers' 2021 Annual General Meeting. I am happy that so many members took the time to register and join us here this morning. Before we begin, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge that I am coming to you from Toronto, which is in the dish with the one spoon territory. We respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of this territory and their unique role in the life of the region. Toronto is on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We pay respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play in this territory. In this turbulent atmosphere, OSPE has actively been working with its industry and government partners to discover how COVID-19 is impacting the engineering community, while working towards finding solutions that will mitigate those health and economic impacts. Even though our offices continue to be physically closed to the public, OSPE continues to work hard on behalf of the engineering profession. In this time of crisis, we believe the stability that the voice of the engineers can provide is more important than ever. We are happy to contribute to well thought out policy founded on the examination of the best evidence. Staff have been working from their home offices to continue to bring value to our members. I would now like to thank our valued partners, the Personal, Home and Auto Group Insurer, National Bank, BMS Canada Risk Services Limited, Canada Life, Epic Training, Manulife Financial. Corestone Law, Member Perks by Vengo, Mercer, Ontario Association of Certified Engineering Technicians and Technologists, Association of Consulting Engineering Companies Ontario, Construction Specifications Canada, Society of Women Engineers, Hispanotech, Canadian Centre for Women and Science, Engineering, Trades and Technology. On behalf of all OSPE members, thank you to our partners for your incredible and ongoing support of Ontario's engineering community. I would also like to take a moment to thank our current 2020 to 2021 OSPE Board Directors. Vice Chair Mark Frayne, Past Chair Dr. Tibor Turi, Treasurer Ron Clifton, Secretary Angela Voitila, Director Nicholas Bergewin, Director David Carnegie, Director Anna Gallimani, Director Jerome James, Director Sue Tessier, Director Laura Yu. Thank you to all my colleagues for helping to lead the organization during this term. Now I officially call the meeting to order. This is the annual meeting of members of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. As President and Chair of the Society, I shall act as Chair of this meeting. OSPE Director of Operations Valeria Mueller will act as our moderator. A notice of this meeting was sent to all members, to each director, and to the Society's auditors. A copy of the notice will be kept by the Secretary with the records of this meeting. I am advised by the moderator that there is a quorum of professional, associate, and honorary members present today. Therefore, we will now proceed with the business of the meeting and declare this meeting to be duly constituted for the transaction of business. All attendees have been provided with an agenda for the meeting and a package of supporting materials, including OSPE's complete audited financial statements. All Society members present today are entitled to vote on general motions. Moving and seconding a motion or asking a question will be done through the Questions tab in your control panel. Once we call for a vote, the operator will put through a polling pop-up, and you will click your vote either in favor of the motion or opposed to the motion. Once you have cast your vote, the polling pop-up will disappear. Only professional, associate, and honorary members are eligible to vote on the appointment of auditors. When I call for a vote on the motion to appoint the auditors, I will ask only those members entitled to vote to do so at that time. Anyone who wanted to designate another person to be his or her proxy at this meeting was required under our bylaws to submit a proxy form to our offices at least 2 business days prior to this meeting. The deadline for receipt of proxies was 4:30 p.m. Thursday, May 6, 2021. The moderator has a tally of all proxies for submission during the vote. I now submit for approval the minutes of the last meeting of the members held on May 6, 2020. A copy of the minutes of that meeting have been provided to every person present. May I have a member move the motion to approve the minutes as circulated? Please use the Questions tab in your control panel to enter your name.
It was moved by Sue Tessier and seconded by Bruce moved by Sue Tessier. You can second the motion, yeah.
Thank you, Val. Is there a second? Please use the question tab in your control panel to enter your name.
Bruce Matthews.
Thank you. Bruce Matthews seconds the motion. Are there any errors, omissions, or discussion? This can be entered through the question tab in your control panel.
No questions, Madam Chair.
Great. We will now call for a vote. Please enter your vote either in favor or opposed to the motion.
The poll will close in 10 seconds. Madam Chair, the motion has been moved.
I declare the motion to be carried. I now welcome our CEO, Sandro Perusa, who has joined me to deliver the report from the Chair and CEO. 2020 was the year we positioned engineers as leaders, rising to the challenge of addressing the impacts of COVID-19. During this unprecedented year, OSPE volunteers remained committed to achieving the goals of our strategic plan, which include to be a place where engineers gather, share expertise, and provide recommendations on issues facing the profession and society, to elevate the awareness of the role engineers play in making the world a better place, and to strengthen and grow OSPE's equitable, diverse, and inclusive engineering community. My proudest accomplishment as president was bringing OSPE members together to create a COVID-19 economic recovery working group. This was a historic opportunity to showcase our skills that can solve many of society's challenges. From transforming engineering education to developing our intellectual property framework, we pushed for advances in reclamation work in mining, electrification of the transportation system, and implementation of inclusive design principles to get Canada back on track. If you have not seen our COVID-19 recommendations, you can find our full provincial and federal submissions on OSPE's website. We heard back from several federal ministers who recognized engineers' impact on the Canadian economy and committed to implement and further discuss many of our ideas. OSPE members also worked with the Ministries of Infrastructure, Labor and Skills Development, Municipal Affairs and Housing, Transportation, and the Attorney General's Office to convene a COVID-19 infrastructure working group along with other stakeholders. New health and safety protocols were created to protect workers and sort through project delays and disruptions. OSPE also presented to the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs regarding the Economic Fiscal Update Act 2020 and the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis on engineers and the economy. Engineers stressed the importance of supporting our profession in order to capitalize on recovery efforts, as well as create new funding for talent development and retention. OSPE and its partners also conducted industry-wide research, funded by NSERC and led by the University of Toronto, to manage future pandemics in Ontario's construction sector. Finally, OSPE called on the government to focus efforts on dealing with the airborne transmission of COVID-19, particularly in schools.
In terms of events, 2020 started off normally for OSPE. Our Research and Innovation Task Force hosted a roundtable on remotely piloted aircraft systems. They released a Growing the Drone Industry report and led a discussion on regulation, public perception, and industry outlook. OSPE also hosted How to Change Your World, a 2-day experiential education program that brought engineers together with business leaders and students. Attendees brainstormed solutions to improve health and education, reduce inequity, spur economic growth, and tackle climate change. By March, the pandemic hit Ontario and caused widespread changes to procedures at OSPE. Our biggest shift was moving from in-person to virtual-only events and meetings. Our major launch of the year, the Ontario Engineering Academy, had to scale back its offerings with virtual-only sessions. Luckily, this was met with a measure of success, as we were able to offer webinars to reach a larger audience. Now in 2021, our academy will be revamping to ensure its offerings include everything engineers will need when CPD becomes mandatory. Our engineering employment events have gone virtual, now called VE3s, which allow job seekers to consider questions from employers before recording their candidate video. In 2020, we introduced Eng Talks, a video series featuring OSPE members and partners presenting topics of interest for engineers. Eng Talks has been one of the most visited areas of our websites since launching. We hosted multiple virtual town halls with Rajan in July, August, and September, as well as virtual trivia nights for engineers to meet peers and complete puzzles together. Our annual Diversity and Inclusion Conference saw more attendance than ever before, bringing over 1,500 attendees from across the country together online. We also held our first fully virtual AGM in OSPE's history last May. Back then, we didn't know that we'd be doing the same thing again this year. And lastly, we launched the Engage Forum, a members-only discussion platform where you, as members, can post your work and share messages with your fellow OSPE members online. So it's safe to say that while our events and activities went virtual, OSPE members were more engaged than ever before.
OSPE also worked to address issues within the profession. After consultation with members around the misuse of an engineer's seal, a CBC News investigation uncovered forged engineering documents for 12 large-scale construction projects across southern Ontario. OSPE continued to call for the regulator to focus on its primary objective of protecting the public in order to uphold the reputation of our profession. The dedicated members of OSPE's Energy Task Force worked to release their yearly report identifying the amount of clean electricity curtailed in Ontario. After a detailed analysis of year-end data provided by the IESO and OPG, the task force found that the province wasted enough electricity to power 720,000 homes in 2019. As usual, these findings were picked up by dozens of news outlets, including Global News, the Financial and National Post, the Toronto Sun, and affiliate newspapers across the country. Alongside our flagship D&I conference, we launched Engineering for Change, a campaign solidifying our commitment to diversity and inclusion in engineering. We are tackling bias and discrimination through a 4-point action plan. First, reaffirming that D&I remains one of our core values through communications, procedures, and events. Second, offering regular D&I training through our Diversify STEM app and by recommending expert consultants. Third, launching a D&I award to honor OSPE members who are making real change. And fourth, convening a summit with all Ontario engineering leaders to develop an industry-wide action plan. OSPE's D&I work will focus on these 4 goals over the coming years. We also continue to advance the position of women in engineering by meeting with the Federal Department of Women and Gender Equality Canada to highlight potential funding opportunities and points of collaboration. We hosted a Women in Engineering virtual panel in partnership with U of T, Spin Master, and the OSPE Exchange Hubs, which focused on inspiring stories of 3 leaders who have overcome barriers in their careers. OSPE continued on its Diversify STEM app, adding 16 new lessons with 2,000 unique logins and 9,000 page views.
In 2020, OSPE was also awarded more than $600,000 in government funding to support research and programs for engineers. Just a few of the examples include funding from NSERC and SHRC for a research project with U of T to better understand barriers for leadership for engineers. Funding from the Ministry of Labor to help international engineering graduates improve communication skills and adapt to the Canadian workforce, specifically for jobs in the environmental sector, and to get ready for the professional practice exam to obtain their license. And funds from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to create a scientific report and a best practices document on excess soils management, just to name a few. Through OSPE's magazines, blog posts, videos, social media channels, and more, we continue to celebrate the impressive achievements of the engineering community throughout 2020. We recorded a series of video testimonials from our members, both new and old, about the value that they received through OSPE membership. In closing, I want to thank all of you, OSPE's dedicated members and ambassadors who contribute your time and your expertise. The knowledge and camaraderie you bring is what makes this community so welcoming and so special. And while the list of activities that Rejan and I just rhymed off was just a long one, it was not exhaustive. We have a lot going on at OSPE, and we hope you'll continue to be engaged by sharing your voice. Moving into 2021, it looks like we will continue to be spending a large part of the year at home. So it was a perfect time to launch the official OSPE podcast, Engineering the Future. This podcast is all about engineers talking to each other about the topics that matter most to you. Visit our website to listen to the latest episodes on continuing professional development, the airborne transmission of COVID-19, supporting Black engineers and engineering students, and much, much more. I'd also like to take this opportunity to tell you about our biggest and most exciting upcoming event yet. OSPE's first annual engineering conference is happening on October 6th and 7th. This conference will feature presentations from engineers and other exciting keynotes, as well as panel discussions with subject matter experts focused on the future of the profession, the engineering workforce, sustainability and innovation, and artificial intelligence. Many of our members who are at our AGM today are also featured speakers at the conference. Please visit www.engineeringconference.ca/2021 to register and to get involved. Thank you all for your valued contributions, for your engagement, and your membership.
Thank you, Sandro. Our next item of business is a report from the Nominations Committee. I now welcome the Chair of the Nominations Committee, Anna Galamani, to deliver her report.
Thank you, Razan. I am pleased to provide the report to the membership on behalf of the 2021 Nominations Committee, which included myself, Dave Carnegie, Ron Clifton, Shelley Deidner, and Christina Weiser. The key duty of this committee was to ensure that the slate of candidates presented to the board represented the interests, sectors, and regions of the society. This year, there were 4 open board positions because of normal rotation for a 3-year term, as well as one open position for a 1-year term. According to the nomination and election procedures in the Society's bylaws, I announce that the following professional engineers shall be directors of the Society to hold office for a 3-year term: Jerome James, Peter Marcucci, Dr. Marilyn Powers, and Irene Styrian. The following professional engineer shall be a director of the Society to hold office for a 1-year term: Stephanie Hogle. I would like to welcome the new directors to the OSPE board. All directors will take office immediately after this meeting. Finally, a big thank you to all the candidates who took the time to run in this year's election. Your dedication and commitment to the engineering profession is truly appreciated.
Thank you, Anna. Our next item of business is the presentation of the financial statements of the Society for the fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020. At this time, I would like to call upon our Treasurer, Ron Clifton, to report on the audited financial statements for 2020.
Thank you, Rajan, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to present the Treasurer's report for the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers for the 2020 fiscal year. As Valeria mentioned earlier, we would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have during the members' question segment of the AGM, and I would ask that questions be held until that time. The financial statements for the year ending December 31, 2020 were audited by BDO Canada Limited, BDO Canada LLP. I am pleased to report that BDO has given an unqualified opinion on the financial statements. A copy of the audited financial statements is included in your AGM package. I would now like to review a summary of our revenues and expenses for 2020. In 2020, OSPE realized total revenues. Next slide, please. In 2020, OSPE realized total revenues of $4,237,771 and incurred total expenses of $3,743,981. This is in excess of revenue over expenses in the amount of $493,790. Major revenues were generated through the following means: membership fees, $1.223 million, royalties, $1.565 million, government projects, $799,000, advertising and sponsorships, $288,000, professional development and career center, $229,000. Remaining revenues of $132,000 included amounts such as investment income and registration fees for various OSPE events. The largest components of the overall expenses incurred in 2020 included administration, $229,000, event production, $452,000, advertising, promotions, and publications, $117,000, government projects, $799,000, insurance and professional services, $513,000, rent, $141,000, wages and benefits, $1.151 million, travel and volunteer expenses, $82,000. The remaining other expenses include governance, sponsorship, and telecommunications. 2020 was a challenging year for many not-for-profit associations who rely on revenue from membership fees, events, and sponsorship. In a year where all of our in-person events were canceled, consequently causing a drop in our revenues, we are extremely grateful that we were given the opportunity to apply for and get financial support under the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy Program. This CEWS support allowed us to reduce our expenses and give us the ability to keep the staff together and, more importantly, transition our member events and services online at either a reduced or no cost, such as webinars and member networking events. The virtual nature of our events meant that they could be offered to a larger, even more diverse audience while breaking down accessibility barriers. This concludes the report for the Treasurer. If there are any questions regarding the 2020 audited financial statements, you will have the opportunity to pose them during the members' question period towards the end of the AGM. On behalf of my fellow Audit and Finance Committee members, Nick Bergwin, David Carnegie, and Mark Frayne, I would now like to present the report of the Audit and Finance Committee and the appointment of auditors. The committee was pleased with the professional, efficient manner in which the auditors BDO Canada LLP carried out their work this year and would like to recommend retaining them for 2021. I think it's right, Jen. So all professional, associate, and honorary members, well, that's your line, Jen.
No. Okay, so to that end, I move that BDO Canada LLP be appointed auditors of the Society to hold office until the next annual meeting or until their successors are appointed, and that the Board of Directors of the Society be authorized to fix the auditor's remuneration. Is there a second? Please use the question tab in your control panel.
Madam Chair, Bruce Matthews seconds the motion.
Thank you. Bruce Matthews seconds the motion. Are there any questions or comments on this motion? Please use the question tab in your control panel.
Madam Chair, there are no questions.
All professional, associate, and honorary members, we will now call for a vote. Please enter your vote either in favor or opposed to the motion.
The poll will close in 10 seconds. Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
I declare the motion to be carried. Thank you, Ron. We now have some time set aside for general member questions from the floor. This meeting is your opportunity to have your questions addressed by the board. I ask that you keep your questions concise so that we may answer them in a timely manner and allow for as many questions as possible. We will permit each member to ask one question at a time. You can ask your questions via the question tab in your control panel. Please also note your name. If you would prefer to ask your question verbally using your own microphone, please select the Raise Your Hand button. Staff will introduce you and unmute your microphone. Individuals will only be allowed to ask one question at a time.
Madam Chair, the first question came in with registration. Who does OSPE represent?
Thanks, Val. OSPE is a voice of the engineering profession in Ontario. We represent the entire engineering community, including professional engineers, engineering graduates, and students who work or will work in several of the most strategic sectors of Ontario's economy.
Will the meeting be recorded?
Yes, the AGM will be recorded and available online after this meeting.
Please explain how you will work cooperatively with PEO. Please explain your priorities for this relationship.
PEO and OSPE are separate organizations with distinct mandates. PEO regulates and OSPE advocates. This division of mandates is used by several professions. OSPE and PEO share information and work together in an official capacity at the board of directors or the council level through the OSPE-PEO Joint Relations Committee. OSPE also works cooperatively with PEO at the staff level, sharing information and resources that can help each of us achieve our distinct mandates. As a member-driven organization, OSPE's goal is to bring engineers together to contribute knowledge, skills, and leadership to create a better future for the profession and society at large.
What is OSPE doing to reverse the current decline in membership?
Although there was an initial decrease in membership at the beginning of the pandemic, we have seen a steady increase in membership numbers since September of 2020. Throughout the pandemic, we have seen increased engagement online due to the launch of monthly advocacy webinars, trivia, and Eng Games nights, and the launch of our Eng Talks video series and our podcast, Engineering the Future. We provided a full update of OSPE's activities in 2020 during our Chair and CEO report today. You can also find our achievements in our annual report, which is included in your AGM package and can be found online.
If you could talk more about how you're going to support our young engineers to find work.
This is a really good question, actually. OSPE's Career Services offers specific tools to help individuals obtain employment. Our virtual engineering employment events connect engineering employers with the profession's top talent. Prior to the event, candidates submit their resume and a video answering the introductory questions provided in each job description. Selected candidates are invited to a 15-minute virtual meeting with their prospective employers on the event date. We also have job search workshops designed to provide individuals with the knowledge and skills to write an impactful resume and cover letter, access the hidden job market, and make connections in their field and successfully land a position that meets their needs. Our Career Center is the premier resource for engineers and engineering graduates who are looking to find a job, advance their career, or looking for engineers to fill a role in your company. Whether you're a student looking for an internship, a young professional looking for your first engineering job, or a seasoned engineer looking to breathe new life into your career, the OSPE Career Center offers a variety of options to help guide you.
Madam Chair, from the question box, from Santosh Gupta, dear Rajan and Sandro, in your initiatives, did you work with PEO?
Thanks for your question, Santosh. Absolutely, we have worked with PEO. We continue to have quarterly meetings yearly through our Joint Relations Committee, where we met with PEO leadership and shared our ideas and offered our assistance in a variety of different organizational directives. I would like to now invite Sandro to provide some information on the detail of what some of those activities were.
Certainly. So in addition to the Joint Relations Committee meetings, I also have regularly meetings with the CEO and registrar to talk about operational issues. A couple of things we work on jointly is the OPA, the Ontario Professional Engineering Awards, and it's something that we hosted virtually this year, and we are waiting to see what the rules are for November to see if that is going to be in person or online. Now, PEO's refocused efforts on its regulatory mandate, they have indicated to us that there are certain areas where they are not able to continue to work with us on various projects, especially if it focuses on a member benefit or a benefit to engineers. Their focus, again, as Rejan mentioned earlier, is on the public interest. So if there is an opportunity to where something benefits both the public and engineers, they're willing to have a conversation with us on. But if it is solely a engineering benefit, they can no longer participate. A great example of that is we applied for some government funding for a new project to look at employment for engineers. And we asked for a letter of support. We didn't ask for money, just a letter of support. That went to their chief legal counsel, and their chief legal counsel said that that was an inappropriate request. So even though they support the initiative, they could not formally support it with a letter of support. So again, we continue to work together. Another example is CPD. OSPE did a survey out to both members and to engineering firms on learning requirements and CPD requirements, or sorry, professional development requirements. POs asked for a copy of that survey so that they can use that to inform the development of their CPD program. And that is another thing that, another example of how we work collaboratively. But again, there are certain barriers as a regulator that they can't cross, and OSPE is happy to see that they are putting those, I guess, those restrictions in place.
Excellent. Thank you, Sandro. Val, are there any other questions from the floor?
Yeah, from member Shengi Seder. What is royalties as part of revenue?
Okay, so great question, Shangis. To answer that question, I'd like to call on our treasurer, Ron Clifton. Ron, would you be able to provide some detail to Shangis as to exactly what we qualify as royalties?
Royalties in our financial statements refer to the fees we get when our affinity partners, like the Prudential and those, actually engage with members. And when they get policies, then we get a small fee called a royalty, and that goes into our revenue bank.
Thank you, Ron. So Shangis, that would be like money from the personal, etc., all of our affinity partners. Hope that answers your question. Thank you, Ron. Val, are there any other questions from the floor?
Yeah, from member Sohail Nazir. How many members does OSPE have, and what is the breakdown?
So the number of members that we have within our organization is actually something that we do not usually actively publicize. We do have representation across all members of the engineering community. So that would be engineering students, engineering graduates who become EITs. We call those associate members within OSPE. We also have professional engineers within our professional membership. And we also have retirees. So it is all of these types, different types of people that effectively constitute the membership of OSPE. Do we have any other questions, Val?
Member Bruce Matthews. What is OSPE's position on the actions being taken by PEO in terms of governance and mandatory CPD?
Well, thank you for your question, Bruce. We fully support the actions that the PEO is taken on, specifically regarding mandatory CPD. In terms of their governance, we are happy and pleased to see PEO taking this step in order to, make their decisions a lot more clear and conclusive and better for all of the engineers within our community. Regarding CPD, I mean, we are ecstatic that this is potentially coming to fruition, not only because we would like to minimize any fatalities or injuries as a result of engineering errors that could occur from lack of continuing professional development, but also because of the ability of all of our up and coming engineers and existing engineers in continuing to develop themselves and in continuing to improve their skill sets so that we can essentially represent our profession well and contribute to society at the same time. So we are definitely on board and fully supportive of their governance and their CPD work, and we cannot wait for it to all be concluded. Are there any other questions, Val?
Yes, from Dr. Tom Murad. Can you elaborate on the membership status and why you could not increase membership of the professional engineers?
So thank you, Dr. Murad, for your question. In terms of elaborating on membership status, what I can say is that, the engineering community, we have an idea of how many people are in there. It's currently approximately 250,000 people within Ontario. Regarding specifically our membership, it's constituted of, again, the students, recent graduates, professionals, and retirees. In terms of increasing membership, this year was a little tough, only because right out of the gate, when we started out in May, we were in the heart of COVID-19. A lot of people were unaware of what would happen. There was a lot of uncertainty. And so we did see some decrease in numbers, mainly, unfortunately, because some of our members had lost their work, their jobs, and so had indicated that they would not be able to renew some of their memberships as a result. As the year continued, though, we did in fact, slowly increase membership. We did have some people who were able to come back to us as they, got new jobs, and also as we began to increase engagement with the sending out of the COVID-19 letters and whatnot. A lot of people who maybe used to be members or were interested in what we were doing as an engineering profession were able to actually see throughout the media, throughout social media, the moves that we were making as an organization, and did in fact return to us and became members. So again, as an organization in general, we do not publicly publish the size of our membership, but I can assure you that there has been a slight increase towards the end of the year. And in this upcoming year, now that we have been in COVID for some time, and I think, where we, as well as the rest of society, is becoming somewhat accustomed to what to expect during a pandemic, that's going to stabilize a lot of decisions that people make out there. And with our activities, we look forward to seeing a further membership increase. Sandro, I don't know if you had anything you'd like to add to that?
Certainly. Yeah, as Rajan said earlier, and the slide deck earlier in the presentation did show, the breakdown of our membership. We do show our membership numbers at our annual report, so it is there. As Rajan also said, there has been a steady increase since September in membership. COVID really did impact our membership numbers. According to the Canadian Society of Association Executives, CSAE, the average association lost about 8% of its membership. One of the decisions OSPE made in 2020 was we did not call lapsed members. Usually when someone's membership lapsed, we have a follow-up phone call to remind them that their membership has lapsed and to see if they want to rejoin. Because of the financial constraints with COVID, that certain members may have lost their jobs or were financially strapped, we decided not to do those follow-up phone calls. Now that things picked up a little bit, membership did steadily increase since September. And since January, we've seen another bout of increase, about 8.5% in the first quarter. So we're heartened by that, and what we're extremely encouraged by is the number of members who've reached back to their firms and have made introductions with us with their firms, and some of the smaller firms are now offering memberships to their employees, where the firm is going to pay for their employees' membership. So we're heartened by that trend, and we're going to continue to move forward in that. And one of the things that they really have highlighted is a new programming OSPE has done with the Eng Talks and with the various webinars, as well as our push with PO to get them to refocus as a regulator. What we've heard from practicing engineers is that lack of focus has really hurt the profession and has hurt their practice. So they were enheartened by the change at PO and the impending implementation of CPD, and they attributed that to the advocacy work of OSPE, as well as, I got to tell you, the work of ACEC Ontario, who is aligned with OSPE on this.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, are there any other questions?
Yes, from Vanessa Raponi. How will OSPE assist P.Engs in completing the newly mandated continued education?
Hi, Vanessa. Thanks so much for your question. So it ties actually very nicely in the plans that OSPE has for the Ontario Engineering Academy. We have sort of briefly mentioned the academy, in our talks this morning so far. But it's basically, a framework that's structured into 3 different pillars that connect an ecosystem and industry segments to deliver educational courses, programs, and certificates to engineers. So within essential engineering, engineering technology, and engineering for society. So that's how we're sort of looking to structure it. In February of this year, an in-depth needs analysis was conducted for the OEA. There were 2 surveys sent out, one to organizations and one to individuals. That included both OSPE members and OSPE non-members. So we could sort of get an assessment of what everyone's thoughts were on this academy. The findings of the needs analysis are the basis of our future OSPE learning and development offerings. So this year, we are partnering with industry experts to launch certification programs as well in health and safety, emotional intelligence, and project engineering. In addition, there will be a focus on developing technical workshops and courses by leveraging our members who are subject matter experts in their respective fields. We plan also to be launching a learning management system for e-learning to complement our current instructor-led training in various topics, including leadership, management, communications, and essential skills. The OEA's goal is really to become the go-to place for lifelong learning for engineers and engineering graduates across Ontario. So Vanessa, we feel we have a comprehensive plan out there that's going to help not only young engineers, but existing engineers to improve themselves and to prepare for CPD, which should be incoming within short order. Hopefully this answers your question. Sandro, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you were very comprehensive. Well done.
Okay, thank you. Val, do we have any further questions?
Yes, from Zed Hosan. Can young professionals contribute to write articles in The Voice magazine?
Absolutely. Everyone actually can contribute to writing articles in The Voice magazine. What goes into The Voice is really determined by our publisher, who also happens to be the CEO of our organization, Sandro Perazza. So, Sandro, I'm going to turn this over to you to just give everyone a general idea of perhaps what we consider for articles that we would include within The Voice magazine.
Excellent. Yeah. So the Voice, we plan the editorial content approximately a year in advance. So we have certain topics, and then we look for articles within those topics. Sometimes we reach out to subject matter experts we know, or we have our own staff writers who reach out to our networks through our advisory group committees, task forces, and subject matter experts and ambassadors. However, if a member does provide an article for consideration and it doesn't get included in The Voice, we have other options for you. One is we can offer it as a blog post on the OSPE blog. A number of our members write blog posts, and we post on the OSPE blog. And I mentioned earlier in my talk about the Engage Forum. The Engage Forum is another opportunity for members to put the research that they've done, articles that where they're looking for some feedback. So if you actually want to use that article to create a discussion, then my recommendation is what we would do is ask the member and work with them to put that article on the Engage Forum and create a discussion point that way. If it's more for information, then we would put it on the blog post, and again, publish that through our social media channels. And again, in a rare instance where the article aligns with the editorial bent of that edition or that issue, then we would include it in the Voice magazine. So again, we have various ways to have members provide input to OSPE.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have any more questions from the membership?
Yes, for member Albert Sheppers. For CPD, have the practices of other provinces been reviewed, and will recommendations be made to permit records from other jurisdictions be permitted in Ontario?
So that is a very good question. So we as OSPE, we are not responsible for ruling out CPD or determining what the requirements of CPD will be. This is strictly in the purview of our regulator. We, as Sandro mentioned, do work together with them on several operational items, which would include the rollout of CPD. And so we would also be providing some input based on feedback from our membership as to what goes into that program. Regarding specifically the CPD offerings in other provinces, I personally have done a review, and I can tell you that it is not identical across all provinces. Some provinces make adjustments depending on if you are a practicing engineer versus a non-practicing engineer. So there are several considerations that we can use as examples from all of our other provinces that I am sure certainly will be reviewed prior to developing a program for Ontario. But as of right now, that has not happened, primarily again because CPD is not yet mandatory within Ontario. And when that actually happens is in the direct control of our regulator. Sandro, would you like to add anything further?
Yeah, again, it's PO will set the parameters of what the CPD program is. We've certainly officially OSPE way back, I believe in 2009 and again in 2012 during the Elliott Lake Commission provided our suggestion that the Ontario model closely aligned with the Alberta model. But again, PO will design their own model. Now, again, in my conversations with the registrar CEO, they have a program already, P.Eng. It's voluntary now. There isn't tremendous pickup on it because it is voluntary. So my best guess would be that to move forward with mandatory CPD, and I know it's something that the Attorney General has talked to PO about, and his wish is that they move on a program quickly. So my guess is the P.Eng program will become mandatory. They'll see what the uptake on it there. Once members use that program, once license holders use that program, PO will gather feedback, and then that program may be improved over the years and changed over the years. But I believe, if I were a betting man, that the P.Eng program will be the new CPD program for PO once it becomes mandatory.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have any further questions?
Yes, there are a couple of questions with respect to membership numbers. If we could just put the slide back to the Treasurer's report under, I believe it was revenues, there is a breakdown of membership numbers. So that is the slide where it breaks down as of December 31st, 2020, Madam Chair.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Val. So I will just read these out just so that it's clear for everyone, just in case there's some folks out there who can't quite read what's on screen. So in terms of OSPE membership numbers as at December 31st of 2020, professional membership is at 4,234 members. Students are at 1,829 members. Interns, 1,404 members. Associate, 965 members. And 65 plus, 1,207 members. Thank you, Val.
Thank you. From Leo Natai, the industrial exception allows unlicensed people to carry out engineering work in Ontario. As we already know, this has a negative impact on our profession and had been a topic of discussion for many years. Does OSPE have any plans to stand up for engineers in Ontario and stop the industrial exception? The industrial exception allows licensed people to carry out engineering work. We already know this has a negative impact on our profession. It kind of repeats itself. So it's with respect to the industrial exception.
Okay, thanks, Val. So the industrial exception, does in fact allow other non-engineers in order to do work that many engineers think is licensed work. And I'm not saying that it's not licensed work, but there is a provision in there that allows a non-engineer to do work that is what we would classify in our community as engineering work. And it's very unfortunate that the industrial exception was allowed to exist in Ontario. And, because of that, it's going to take a bit of a campaign and a bit of work in order to repeal the industrial exception. It's an issue that's very important to some of our members, not all of our members. And so, what we would like to do moving forward is really to start, looking at what we could potentially do with regard to the industrial exception. However, we do not have any plans right now. So within, like, say, the next 6 to 12 months, to even start looking at it. It's something that we would need to discuss as an organization. And of course, that we would need to get feedback from all of our members to determine just how important this issue is to them, and to discuss with the other stakeholders involved, which would include our regulator, as well as members of our government, to first determine how we would move forward in repealing an industrial exception, if that's the decision that's made based on member feedback. So with that, I will turn it over to Sandro to see if he would like to add any additional information.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I have been talking to our government contacts about their interest, the opportunity to discuss the industrial exemption. The feedback I've got from the political parties is this isn't something that they're willing to discuss right now. The focus right now is COVID and getting the economic recovery back started up. And they're concerned that if Ontario starts to introduce the industrial exemption, many of the manufacturers will leave the country or move to other jurisdictions. So that's the concern, and it's not something that they're willing to discuss. It's certainly something that OSPE would be willing to have a conversation on and would be willing to move forward with. But again, there needs to be some evidence on what the benefit to, obviously we understand the benefit to engineers. What we need to do is identify the benefit to manufacturers and to have licensed engineers do the work. So that might be a potential study we do in the future.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have any new questions?
Yes, from Ian Kirby. What is OSPE's position on people using the title software engineer that are non-P.Engs?
Thanks, Val. So we defer to the definition of the word engineer in the Act, which basically says that you can only call yourself an engineer if you have a P.Eng or have been given a professional engineering license from our regulator. I really don't think that there's much more to say than that. So any title that contains the word engineer in it, the expectation is that that person holds a P.Eng. Are there any further questions, Val?
From Charles Chetiar, there was some information about OSPE and PO being merged. Is it going to happen? I feel that it is better to keep advocacy separate from PEO. Being independent gives OSPE better mandate.
Thanks for the question, Val. Well, that's news to me that OSPE and PEO planned to merge or will merge. This is the first that I'm ever hearing of it. I will point out that it was 20 years ago, actually, in 2000, that that OSPE was separated or created to be separate from the PEO, specifically to do advocacy, because it was believed that having the same organization do both advocacy and regulatory work worked at cross purposes. And so, given that that is the reason why OSPE was formed in the first place in 2000, um, I am very sure that there will be no discussions of the merging of OSPE and PEO anytime soon. Sandro, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to add to that. I think that's a very interesting proposal.
Yeah, no, it would be inappropriate for OSPE and PO to merge. That's not the model in Ontario. In fact, again, the Attorney General's office would prefer PO to divest itself of all non-regulatory activities.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have any further questions?
Yes, we have a raised hand from the audience, Madam Chair, from Antonio Martinez Salgado, and Dana is just going to unmute him.
Thanks, Val and Dana.
Yeah, go ahead, Antonio.
Antonio, you may be on mute.
Hello?
And we can hear you now, Antonio. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I was listening to you when you explained the plan that in the future only graduate engineers with a PO number will be able to identify themselves as engineers. And I was trying to confirm that conclusion and confirm if this is the position of OSPE supporting this conclusion.
Thanks for your question. So actually, it's not even, it has nothing to do with OSPE. It is set in the Act, you know, that our regulator and OSPE lives by, that you can only be called an engineer if you have a professional engineering license. This is not a new plan, by the way. This has been in existence for quite some time. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how long that has been the rule, but it has been the rule at least for as long as since I've left engineering school, right? So that is the direction. OSPE has no control or say if that changes or not. It's always been like that. That you have to have a professional engineering license in order to call yourself an engineer. So, for example, if you do not have a professional engineering license, then you would be considered an engineering graduate, not an engineer. Thanks for the question, Antonio.
Okay.
Val, are there further questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll go back to some that have asked questions a few times. So Santosh Gupta had a second question with respect to what efforts are you making to work with PEO chapters?
Okay, I can definitely you know, answer that. At this point, the chapters belong to the PEO. OSPE organization does not really have anything to do with the chapters in terms of organization of chapter work or strategic direction of what chapters should do. The chapters currently sit with Professional Engineers Ontario, who is our regulator, and they have really not asked us to have any official involvement with the chapters, and there is no initiative currently in place to do so. That does not mean that OSPE is not willing to have a discussion regarding the future of chapters with the PEO, however. And if something like that were to come up, it would most likely be a discussion directly between Sandro and the registrar of the PEO, or something that most likely would come through the JRC, which is the Joint Relations Committee, where PEO leadership and OSPE leadership meet 4 times a year to discuss, how we can help each other, and that's something that would fall within that purview. I can sort of go on a little bit and tell you that, in the fall of 2019, OSPE launched exchange hubs, which will be made up of a group of engineering students, graduates, and engineers studying, living, and working in a particular community in Ontario, who are interested in engaging with each other on topics related to the engineering profession. So I bring that up just to say that we have our own network of activity in specific areas to discuss matters within engineering and how we feel we can best help each other within the engineering ecosystem. But I want to stress that that work is separate from what you're referring to as the PEO chapters, because again, the chapters fall under the purview of PEO, and the PEO has not asked us to have anything to do with the chapters in an official or in an unofficial capacity. I hope that answers your question. Val, do we have further questions?
Another question from Dr. Tom Murad. Engagement online is for free. Members sponsor OSPE financially. Why are you ignoring that?
I am actually not sure what the actual question is. Yes, engagement is online is for free, but in order to access some of our tools, such as the Engage Forum, you do have to be an OSPE member. So you do have to pay a membership in order to be able to access or connect with other members within OSPE. And that's just the way that we function. So I'm honestly I'm not I guess I am not sure what the question actually is. Sandro, do you want to take a stab at this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna assume he's asking why we're offering courses for free to non-members, or programs for free for non-members. I think
Okay.
It's something that we're looking at. So as we're developing these new tools and new solutions, I think we're going to be offering them for everyone to be able to see and to preview and to try out. As they become established, then we will put them as a member benefit. So I think it's the reason that we were offering like the Eng Talks and the podcasts at no additional cost. I don't like the word free. At no additional cost to non-members is for them to preview and see what OSPE has to offer. But I can tell you that as CPD becomes online, any of these programs will be free, continue to be at no additional cost to OSPE members, but will not be offered at no cost to non-members. So that is a transition that we'll be making over the next few months.
Thank you, Sandro. That was a really good answer. Dr. Murad, we hope that definitely answers your question. Thank you. Val, do we have further questions?
Santosh Gupta is asking what wages the auditors will be paid.
Good question. Ron, if you're still around, do you happen to have that information available?
Yeah, good question. First of all, The auditors do not get paid wages. They're not employees of any kind. They are independent, so they are paid fees. Last year, I believe we paid something like $35,000 in fees. About 25K of that was for OSPE, audited financials, and the rest was auditing of some of our government programs. The auditors' fees are reviewed every fall by the Audit and Finance Committee and approved at that time. And so this year's next fees will be determined in this fall. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ron. Val, do we have any further questions?
Yes, Ian Kirby has asked a continued question. PO has not prevented technology companies like Microsoft and Google from employing non-engineers as software engineers. Is there anything OSPE can do to encourage PO and the government to ensure only P.Eng holders use the engineer title, especially in tech?
Great question. So the title engineer is part of the act, and the definition in terms of what it is, as I said before, is that you have to hold a professional engineering license in order to be called an engineer. You know, OSPE, as every individual or many individuals out there, knows that there are people who do choose to still use the engineering title or the engineer title. And really that has to do with enforcement. So what your question is asking is, does OSPE have the authority to discipline or enforce the use of the engineer term with companies in industry? And the answer is no. That's something that we do not look after. The PEO would have to be involved in order and contact those companies so that they can stop doing it, at least to let them know that they are committing an infraction that goes against the Professional Engineers Act, because that is OSPE's directive in terms of administering how the act is used. Sandro, I don't know if you had any additional comments.
Yeah, very, very, very quickly. Yes, this is one of the conversations I had with the CEO registrar, Johnny Zucon. I raised this issue with him because it's been raised with me by the members. He is aware that this is a practice that happens. They do their best to inform these companies, as do we. When we ensure that any organization that works with OSPE is aware of the distinction that the title is a protected title. But I can, without breaking too many confidences, part of the issue with PO enforcing that is they don't have enough resources to go after all these companies that do it. And hence OSPE's focus to get PO, solely a regulator. So if they, stopped all their non-regulatory activities, that would free up money, and that would free up staff, and that would free up resources to be able to go after these companies and perhaps put both a better educational program together, but also better enforcement.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have further questions?
Dr. Tom Arad is asking, can we have a commitment from the new board and staff that exceptional efforts and focus will be on membership and be accountable to the next AGM?
So I cannot, unfortunately, as president and chair in this year, make that commitment to you here right now. But what I can commit to is ensuring that our new president and chair does have that discussion with the incoming board of directors. I can also tell you that from this year, in terms of our strategy, that we do have membership and member engagement as one of the primary operational issues that we are taking a look at. So that's the best commitment that I can make to you right now, Tom. I can tell you that we have taken steps to ensure that the success of our organization is in fact tied to membership. And I will leave it at that. So hopefully that answers your question. Sandro, did you want to add anything? Okay, so Sandra's not going to add anything to that. Thank you, Tom, for your question. Val, do we have any more questions?
Yes, from Sahil Nasir. Is OSPE thinking for broader approach with engineering community, creating chapters like PEO?
So the closest thing that we have that could be considered similar somewhat to chapters at the PEO would be the OSPE exchange hubs. But they're very different in the sense that the OSPE exchange hubs was designed to bring together engineering students who are curious about what engineering has to offer, engineering professors who have the education and academic background and the history of working on a variety of cutting edge projects, the existing engineering graduates and professional engineers within the community who can bring their expertise into the fold, right? So they have real world experience, as well as any companies within industry who are aware of the existence of these hubs and essentially would like to contribute in some way, whether it's through providing challenges to be solved or to providing funding, or you name it. So we have our own entity, let's say, that we've created called the exchange hubs, which are very different from PEO chapters. Sandra, anything to add?
Yeah, just to that end, again, until PO determines what the future of the chapters are, and until they invite us to be part of that conversation, we are moving forward with, again, our exchange hubs. We have 5 currently. We're in negotiations with a few other communities to start other exchange hubs that will be launching in the fall. So that is our opportunity to get OSPE engagement outside the GTA.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, do we have further questions?
Shangi Seder is asking what OSPE thinks about the recent PO changes moving away from self-regulation and peer review.
Okay, thank you for your question, Changiz. I am not very familiar with this. Sandro, do you have any comments on this particular topic?
Yeah. I think whatever process PO determines is best for them to refocus as a regulator and focus on the public interest is the one OSPE will support. So if this moves them along that continuum, fantastic. If it doesn't, then we would have concerns. But so far, I'm not going to comment on the methodology they're using. That's up to them.
Thank you, Sandro, and thank you for your question. Val, are there further questions?
Antonio Martinez Salgado would like to confirm the information that in the future only graduate engineers with a PO number will be able to identify themselves as an engineer.
So absolutely, yes. As long as they have, yes, as long as they have their PEO number, absolutely.
Charles Chetier, do you think that in the future software professionals could come into the preview of POs, information technology becomes more intrusive and can cause harm in people's lives? Example, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc. As a role of a professional engineer is to safeguard the public from faults from engineering design.
Thank you for your question. So it's actually a very good question. But I will start off by saying that the PEO or our regulator is the one who has full control over who does and doesn't get a P.Eng and over which disciplines as a result do and do not get reviewed through the PEO. So the answer to your question is absolutely. There should be a role for a method of the PEO being able to have engineering graduates within those fields and to ensure that the standard of work and the standard of practice that those engineering graduates do is up to a certain level. Unfortunately, OSPE is not part of that process. It's something that we can discuss with them and we can bring up with the PEO through our JRC meetings or Sandro, in his capacity as CEO of OSPE, can definitely have a conversation with the registrar of the PEO, who happens to be Johnny Zucon, and they can discuss if there's ways that OSPE can have a say or provide some information that may assist in that endeavor. So hopefully that answers your question. Sandro, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think, I mean, there's going to be a conversation over the next few years about what is the future of the profession and what is the future of regulation of the profession. I know in some circles, they're looking at, do we move from regulating individuals to regulating entities with respect to the practice of professional engineering? So it's an ongoing conversation, and certainly OSPE will insert itself into that conversation as the voice of engineers.
Thank you, Sandro. Val?
There are just a couple comments, one from Albert Shepherds. He just wanted to, a point of interest, the issue of the use of the engineer has been challenged and upheld in the courts. And Joe Adams, you may wish to mention to attendees that if they are aware of an enforcement issue, they can report this directly to PEO.
Perfect.
Sorry, from Antonio Martinez Salgado, has OSPE consulted with legal service companies to confirm that that is legal to limit the engineer name for the private use? Could OSPE in the future confront legal issues if someone decides to take issue in the courts?
It's a really good question. I know that we do consult with Corestone Law because they are one of our affinity partners. I'm unsure if we've ever had a discussion to that end. Sandro, are you aware of any discussions on this particular area?
No, I think to the comments of Albert and Joe earlier that this is really in the realm of PO. So I get on a weekly basis, OSPE gets questions both from the public and both from professional engineers around legal issues and legal questions around the Professional Engineering Act and the practice of professional engineering. I have a direct contact with various departments within PO. I respond to the to whoever put in the inquiry around OSPE's role and role of PEO. I then make an introduction to the appropriate person at Professional Engineers Ontario, whether it's on the legal side or whether it's on the practice of professional engineering professional standards group to make that introduction, and then I let PO respond, because again, it would be inappropriate for OSPE to make comments or make suggestions on the Act. That is PO's role of how to interpret the Act and how to enforce it. We do have, to Rajan's point, if we do have a member who has a legal inquiry, the other thing we do is we do make a connection to them with our affinity partner on the legal side, Corestone Law, which offers a half-hour free legal advice. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Sandro. Val, are there any further questions?
From Dr. Tom Murad, it is clear that staff costs are over 30% of the total budget and almost equal all the membership revenue. What are you doing in that area to optimize the staff while our fellow engineers are losing jobs every day?
Thanks for your question, Dr. Murad. So Sandro, our CEO, he heads the staff and he determines, what the staffing needs are in our organization. We did, in fact, receive CEWS funding this year. Again, we were very happy to be able to receive CEWS funding that allowed us to maintain our staffing levels at where they currently are. I will now turn it over to Sandro to, I guess, address your question as he sees fit. Go ahead, Sandro.
Sure. Yep. That's appropriate. About a third of our costs are staffing costs. We are a membership organization. We serve the needs of members. We have staff who do a lot of things. We don't outsource a lot of our work like other organizations do. So if you look at some other organizations, their consulting fees are significantly high. I don't believe in outsourcing. I believe have control over the work we do, especially when it comes to serving our members. I can then hold my staff accountable where I can't hold consultants accountable. We have service standards in place to ensure that our members are served, that their requests are returned within 24 hours or less. So yeah, I make no apologies for the fact that we don't outsource our services, especially our core services, that in fact we have staff to respond to member needs and to develop the programs and ongoing programs to meet where our members need to be met.
Thank you for your response, Sandro. Val, do we have further questions?
We just have one more question from Dr. Murad. Can you explain the status of the Engineering Academy? How have you prepared for CPD programs, and who are your resources?
Thank you for the question, Val and Dr. Murad. So I did talk about this a little bit earlier, but I will, definitely expand a little bit again. So we are working currently, we did a needs analysis for the OEA to essentially understand from organizations and the individual perspective, what do engineers and companies who employ engineers out there really need in the engineer? We are partnering with industry experts to launch certification programs in a variety of areas, primarily within project engineering, emotional intelligence, and health and safety. We are also leveraging our members who are subject matter experts in their respective fields to put on webinars, as well as to provide input into courses that we're developing. We also have instructor-led training in various topics, which would include leadership, management communications, and essential skills. And as you know, Dr. Murad, the OEA's goal is to become the go-to place for lifelong learners and engineers and engineering graduates across Ontario. We had extensive plans for this year in order to launch this academy. Those plans were stymied as a result of COVID-19 and the uncertainty and not knowing, what our world would exist like even by this time. And so we have had to delay, the launch of the academy, and as a result, what we can provide and how we can upskill. As CPD does start to become into play, so I want to stress again, I know everybody's been hearing a lot about CPD. The reality is that at this moment in time, CPD has not been implemented in Ontario, and I should specify and say mandatory CPD has not been implemented in Ontario. But as that gets rolled out, we are plugged in with the PEO at the leadership levels in order to offer our help and to find out how we can best serve the engineering community by providing the right courses and ensuring that engineers have the right skills so that they will not only meet the CPD requirements, but they will elevate our profession across the province. Sandro, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just the only thing is, the staff, the OSPE will continue to be, use evidence to judge the direction of the academy based on both the needs assessment that was done, a pretty comprehensive needs assessment that both went to individual engineers and to engineering companies, as well as we have an advisory group made up of directors from the OSPE board, who will continue to provide that strategic direction for the academy.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandro, for your answer. Val, do we have any further questions?
That concludes the question period, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Val. Thank you, Sandro. Thank you for your questions, everyone. If you have questions that have not been addressed, please feel free to contact our Society's offices at any time. Our staff will make every effort to assist you or to forward your inquiries to the appropriate board member for a response. We now have a few very exciting presentations to make. In 2018, the National Engineering Month Ontario Steering Committee initiated the first annual University Student Challenge sponsored by the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. This student competition now takes place during National Engineering Month every March. Teams of up to 5 students work together to host one or more public outreach events in their local community. Getting involved in public outreach is a great way to strengthen communication and organization skills, something future employers will be keen to see. It is a fantastic opportunity to ignite passion for engineering in others and potentially improve the diversity of future engineering students. I will now announce the winners. In first place is the team from the University of Waterloo. Yashushwini Hamal, Janavi Desai, Crystal Yi, Maria Fraser Seminoff. In second place is the team from Carleton University. Millie Patel, Cornelius Lieberd, Isaac Sanderson, and Macy Orell. And in third place is the team from McMaster University. Sheridan Fong, Maya Fangzua, Terrell Marshall, Damilola Fadia. Congratulations, Waterloo, Carleton, and McMaster. As a volunteer-led organization, OSPE relies on skilled, dedicated engineers and engineering graduates to help us advocate on behalf of the engineering profession. OSPE has the opportunity to recognize some of our exceptional volunteers with the OSPE President's Volunteer Award in the categories of professional and young professional. Receiving the OSPE President's Volunteer Award is a unique recognition for OSPE ambassadors going above and beyond in effecting positive change for the engineering profession in Ontario. The Professional Engineers category recognizes exceptional OSPE volunteers who have served as advocates for the engineering community through various roles in committees, task forces, and boards for the betterment of engineers across the province. I am pleased to announce that the 2021 Professional Engineers Award in the professional category is being awarded to 2 outstanding volunteers. The first award is being awarded to OSPE past board director, Emily Thorn Corthay. Emily Thorn Corthay joined the OSPE board in 2016 and brought with her a passion for the profession, along with more than 15 years of experience in energy engineering. In addition to taking on a role as a member of the OSPE's Audit and Finance Committee, Emily immediately took on the role of chair of the Energy Task Force and has consulted with all political parties on a regular basis regarding electricity price reform and reducing emissions, helping to advance the reputation of engineers with policymakers. Emily is the founder and president of Thorn Associates, an energy and carbon management consulting corporation. She is a co-founder and chair of the board of directors of Step Up, an organization dedicated to breakthrough energy management performance through improved gender equity, and past director of energy optimization and management at Hatch. A laureate of the Relev TO Young Professional Award, Emily has been a project manager, technical reviewer, and energy engineer for over 70 industrial energy efficiency projects, resulting in over 50 million in implemented energy savings. Her work has included energy audits, energy design reviews, energy efficiency improvement projects, studies, and implementation of energy management information systems. Emily was also a team member of Canada's first pilot program aimed at helping 5 manufacturers achieve the ISO 50001 energy management standard. One of 5 Canadian instructors for the Certified Energy Manager course, and a certified measurement and verification professional with a master's degree in mechanical engineering. Emily has been featured in a CBC video and on Radio Canada. She has published 10 articles in respected journals such as Chemical Engineering Progress, and has been a keynote speaker at multiple energy conferences. We are thankful to have such a dedicated, active, and knowledgeable volunteer supporting OSPE. I'd like to now call on Emily to virtually accept this award.
Hi, Rejan and Sandro, and to the rest of the OSPE board, OSPE staff, and OSPE community. Thank you so much. I am honored and thrilled to receive this very prestigious award, and I do want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to thank my family, my husband, Emmanuel Corthay, my 3 children, Kevin, and my twins, Amy and Clara. And again, to the whole OSPE community, to the OSPE Energy Task Force for their kind nomination for this award. And really love working with all of you on the Energy Task Force, and also enjoyed the COVID Economic Recovery Working Group, all virtual meetings, etc. So thank you to all. Advocacy is really important, and I would really urge all of you here today to stay engaged, maybe even increase your engagement. One thing is in the next year, in about 1 year exactly, there will be an Ontario election. So the next year is really critical to ensure we have engineers and technically trained professionals who are going to be representing us in the government. And so please, again, get involved in with OSPE, the Political Action Network. I'm sure will be ramping up, etc. So second of all, I'd just like to quickly, I have just 1 or 2 minutes to speak, just urge you as chair of the Energy Task Force and someone who fervently believes that climate change is the key, most important issue of this century, as we finally are starting in Ontario to get a handle on this COVID-19 pandemic. We must really focus on climate change. And so I would urge you to look at your own carbon footprint. In Ontario, the majority of an average Ontarian's carbon footprint is made up of 4 things: 1, driving; 2, home heating; 3, flying; and 4, eating beef. So I would urge you consider your actions. And lastly, tomorrow is Mother's Day, and COVID-19 has been hard for the entire population of the world. But I think beyond those who have been sick and afflicted, that is of course the most terrible loss we have had. But in addition to our healthcare workers and those affected, I think parents of young children in particular, and mothers, have had a disproportionate impact. And I would just like to acknowledge all of the mother engineers out there for your work and your sacrifice in doing the virtual schooling and doing your work as engineers for society. So thank you, and happy Mother's Day tomorrow. And again, thank you to OSPE for this award, and I encourage you all to get involved with OSPE. It's a fantastic organization, and I am very thrilled to be a part. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. The second award is being awarded to Emmanuel Korthy. Emmanuel has led many aspects of the OSPE Research and Innovation Task Force, initially as a member and then as associate chair. He has consistently showed initiative in many ways since he joined the Research and Innovation Task Force. He started by working with the task force chair to streamline the work of the group by creating tracks and subcommittees to maximize members' engagement in areas of interest. Work is now tackled in between meetings by separate groups, each with a team lead. As a result, subcommittees were created such as artificial intelligence, data governance, 5G, and autonomous aircraft. Emmanuel has helped drive events such as Smart Cities at Cisco's office, a panel discussion at Spin Master in downtown Toronto on engineering, innovation, and creativity, the past, present, and future of engineering, where he was a panelist, and the future of the drone industry at the Downsview Aerospace Innovation and Research Hub. He has contributed to articles in our Voice magazine, such as Can Artificial Intelligence Fuel the Next Wave of Innovation? Or 5G is here, but is Canada ready? And 5G and municipalities. He has worked to provide recommendations during 4 formal consultations: Ontario Chamber of Commerce Data Group, formal submission to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada on Artificial Intelligence, and Minister of Government and Consumer Services of Ontario on privacy, as well as Toronto's Digital Infrastructure Advisory Group. He has provided input to OSPE's 2019 Canadian Federal Election Strategy Report, the COVID-19 Economic Recovery Working Group, the Federal Election Roundtable, as well as government budgets. Emmanuel has represented the Research and Innovation Task Force at the MPP reception at Queen's Park in 2019 and virtually met with the Federation of Municipalities of Ontario on 5G and presented the task force recommendations to Ontario's Minister of Government and Consumer Services on privacy. His fellow task force members have referred to Emmanuel as a quiet but enthusiastic and consistent mentor and support system. Emmanuel, we are truly grateful for your tireless contributions to not only OSPE, but to the engineering community. I now virtually welcome to the screen Emmanuel Korthy.
Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Sandro. Thank you also to Nicolas, the chair of the Research and Innovation Task Force, all the other members that I had a pleasure to work with as a volunteer, the SMEs, and of course my wife that we just saw. So that's proof that engineering is not just career related, right? It can be social as well. It's possible. So we met through an exchange between my university in Lausanne and Waterloo. So here you go. Engineering can take you far and wide. So I'm happy to be volunteering for OSPE. I guess what I wanted to say is that it goes beyond career. Obviously, we have a duty to communicate and connect. So in preparation for Mother's Day, my daughter gave me a little star here this morning, and she said, "Oh, you're the one that is going to light the way for Mother's Day. We all have a power this weekend." And I think that's one of the power of engineers, really. It seems really apropos. We have a duty to connect and also, think, share, and show the way a little bit as well. Beyond that, I encourage everybody to think about your engagement. I think, volunteering has brought me a lot in my career as well. So it goes both ways. So engage as much as you can. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say is don't wait until you feel you're ready, right? We engineer or engineering-minded people might, be perfectionists and want to know everything and be the real expert at the nth degree before we share. I don't think we need to wait, and I don't think we can wait. We have too many issues out there to solve. So I encourage everybody to, go out there, volunteer. OSPE is a great organization to amplify our voice. I think that's really what I enjoy at OSPE. Thank you very much, Rajan.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And thank you, Emily, as well. The Young Professionals category recognizes an exceptional OSPE volunteer who has contributed well beyond the normal level of effort and has served as an advocate for the engineering community through various roles during academic studies and immediately following graduation. This individual has volunteered their time for the betterment of engineering students and young professionals across the province. For the 2021 Young Professionals category, the honor is being given to Vanessa Raponi. At the beginning of her undergraduate degree at McMaster, Vanessa created a student group on campus to support LGBTQ students called McMaster NG Queers. The three pillars of this organization were to facilitate social connection, increase professional development, and advocate and educate external bodies. By her final year of schooling, this had evolved into a national not-for-profit organization named ENGIEcareers Canada, which connected 32 engineering universities across 9 provinces with similar groups impacting thousands of students. Vanessa helped to personally create several of these groups across the country and acted as president and advisor of EQC for 4 years. Throughout her undergrad, she traveled across the country, presenting at conferences ranging from ESCO, CFES, and EWB student-led conferences to Engineering Change Lab, NCDEAS, NSERC, and Universities Canada professional and executive-focused conferences. In these sessions, she would present on a range of topics, from social entrepreneurship to systemic oppression 101 to strategic planning of EDI integration into organizations. Since graduating, Vanessa has continued this perpetual advocacy for marginalized people by engaging in events approximately once a month, including most recently speaking at the Ontario Science Centre at the International Discover E Global Marathon, and supporting the Canadian undergraduate chemistry and physics conferences separately. Vanessa began working with OSPE in 2017 when she provided an opinion piece on her first contribution to the Voice magazine and Society Notes blog. In February 2018, she joined the OSPE EDI committee and continued to volunteer directly with OSPE until September 2020. During this time, she helped to provide critical feedback and perspective on LGBTQ issues while supporting concurrent OSPE initiatives. Vanessa received an award of recognition from OSPE for her volunteer service during a volunteer appreciation luncheon in July of 2018. She submitted an article on microaggressions that was featured on the front page of The Voice in June 2019, and in November 2019, she spoke on a panel in Ottawa at OSPE's EDI conference. In June of 2020, Vanessa wrote an article on International Women in Engineering Day about her experience as a woman of color for The Voice. Vanessa has always been very public and vulnerable about her childhood. The hardships that she has experienced have made her more resilient and stronger. It gives her the opportunity to speak out as someone with lived experience who has been able to either overcome or live with the realities of what she has been through. She consistently receives messages after her talks from those who were able to relate seemingly unique parts of her story, which are often, in fact, commonplace things that people often don't have the courage to reveal about themselves. This bold vulnerability helps others know that they are not alone. Vanessa, thank you for the immeasurably valuable work you have done. You always strive towards making a difference. Your passion and energy are unparalleled, and we respect your spirit of volunteerism immensely. I'd now like to ask Vanessa to join me and virtually accept her award. Vanessa, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rajan. That was very heartwarming to hear. OSPE has been an incredible part of my journey over the last few years in volunteering and connecting with other engineers at the provincial level. I'm still in EIT, but I'll be getting my P.Eng hopefully in a couple months, so I'm excited to more formally enter the profession. But what I wanted to use this platform and this moment for in this speech acceptance is to really just take a pause to all the folks and the members that are here today. Each and every one of you cares a lot about our profession. And one thing we have in common is that as engineers, we have a strong obligation to society. What has been very clear is that our societal representation and our representation within the profession have not been matched for a very long time now. And people like me really represent the future of engineering. So while I'm a woman, I'm also a woman of Sri Lankan heritage, so I identify as a woman of color. While I am a woman, I am also a member of the LGBTQ community, so I identify as a queer person. This means that there is a lot of complexity to my identity and that I've faced very different challenges than the folks who've come before me have faced. So what this needs to look like for all of us and how we can each independently help with this problem is that we are all in different meetings, different rooms, writing different emails, speaking to different team members of different influence levels. That means that we each have opportunities to bring forward those who are in positions that are more vulnerable than us, people who are either younger, in lower roles, or who just aren't able to have their voice heard the same way that we are. So don't ever feel discouraged that you need to make these big, outstanding statements and big movements. It takes just every single sentence for making change. All you need to be doing is to use your voice to help amplify others. And that can look like so many different things, whether that's just sharing someone else's opinion and making sure that their voice is getting heard and that they're getting credit for the fact that that was their opinion, or something as significant as advocating for promotions behind closed doors for people who have been maybe looked over. It is the responsibility of all of us to make this imperative of EDI come forward in our profession, and I have a lot of confidence that as more people like me enter the profession and are able to be representation for others, that we will continue this tumbleweed effect and we'll get more and more people to enter the profession in a way that represents our society more effectively. So thank you so much to OSPE for all of the different opportunities and platforms. Sandro and Rejan, both of you have been great role models to me for a very long time now, and I've made some fantastic connections through OSPE over these last few years. So thank you everybody so much, and please stay connected in the future. All the best.
Thank you, Vanessa. Throughout my tenure as chair of OSPE, I have relied upon the dedication and support of my fellow board members, several of whom are ending their terms this year. I would like to now take a moment to thank our outgoing board directors. Dr. Tibor Turi joined the OSPE board in 2017, and with his passion for innovation and inspiring the next generation of engineers, he immediately took on the role of the chair of the Research and Innovation Task Force. In 2019, he accepted the appointment of OSPE's vice chair and then served as our president and chair in 2020. During his time as president, Tibor led us through the creation of the 2019 to 2022 strategic plan, our exchange hubs, the launch of our new website, our EDI conference, How to Change the World, and our new Ontario Engineering Academy. During his tenure on the board, he also served as chair of the Board Development and Strategic Planning Committee, the HR Committee, the Executive Committee, and as a member of the Nominations Committee, as well as representing OSPE on the OSPE-PEO Joint Relations Committee. Angela Voitila joined the OSPE board in 2018. She took on the role of chair of the Women Advisory Engineering Champions Task Force and led the creation of OSPE's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. OSPE's November 2020 EDI conference saw record numbers with over 1,500 registrants. Angela has a long-standing interest in advocacy and diversity. This includes board experience as a member of Information Technology Association of Canada's Women on Boards Diversity Committee, as a board member of Young Professionals in Energy Toronto chapter, and an integral member of the CGI Diversity and Inclusion STEM Camp Committee. During her tenure on the board, she has served on the Audit and Finance Committee and the Board Development and Strategic Planning Committee, and most recently on the Executive Committee as Secretary. Laura Yu also joined OSPE's board in 2018, and with her vast experience as a research and development engineer, she took on the role as the vice chair and then chair of OSPE's Research and Innovation Task Force. In 2019 and 2020, she took on the role of chair of OSPE's Nominations Committee and as a member of the Executive Committee. She has also represented OSPE on the Ontario Professional Engineers Foundation for Education. Laura constantly works to help advance and promote the engineering profession through engagement with engineers, engineering students, industry, and government. Her goal has been to amplify the role and work of engineers in addressing global challenges and to showcase their impact on Ontario's future growth. Behind every successful member organization, there is an extraordinary volunteer team. Being a volunteer is a demanding task. On behalf of OSPE, I thank you, Tibor, Angela, and Laura, for contributing so much of your time, energy, and efforts to the engineering community. It has been my pleasure to work with each of you. As is tradition, at the end of this meeting, I will have completed my tenure as President and Chair of the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. It has been a challenging year, but I am very proud of what we have been able to accomplish. Thank you again to my fellow board directors, the staff, and you, the members. I would now like to introduce you to OSPE's Vice Chair and incoming President and Chair. Mark Frayne hopes to use his background volunteering for advocacy organizations to ensure that OSPE maintains and heightens the relevancy of engineers in society. He is committed to OSPE's strategic pillars and the roles engineers have in maintaining public safety, alongside maintaining outreach to all sectors and groups in the engineering community. Everyone, please welcome Mark Frayne.
Thank you, Rajan. I look forward to the challenge, but I know that you're leaving big shoes to fill. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and congratulate you on the job you have done over the last year as President and Chair of OSPE. As you have noted, this was not an easy or straightforward year, and I'm certain that this was not the way you envisioned your presidency. It was a year where our association needed to pivot to overcome the challenges faced by not only our organization, but by our membership. With others' work, there's ways towards being different. You strive towards making a difference. As president of OSPE, you started your term by chairing the COVID Economic Recovery Working Group. You led OSPE ambassadors through this historic opportunity to highlight how engineers can solve our province's challenges. You helped lead input to produce 5 immediate, 10 short-term, and 8 long-term recommendations that Ontario and the federal governments could implement. Because of this work, OSPE received acknowledgement by government ministers, along with evidence of execution and discussion surrounding many of these recommendations. Throughout the year, you made yourself available to members on a regular basis by hosting town halls to gain feedback and ensure engineers had answers to all of their questions surrounding COVID-19. Rajan, you are a dedicated and focused. You are hardworking and full of innovative ideas. I hope that the good work you do will come back to you many times over. On behalf of OSPE, I would like to thank you for your professionalism, coolness, under pressure, vision, and guidance. On a personal note, I appreciate the mentorship that you have shown me.
Thank you, Mark. We have now come to the end of our meeting. I ask that all members of the 2021 to 2022 OSPE Board of Directors please join the pre-arranged teleconference meeting 15 minutes following the close of the AGM for the first meeting of the OSPE Board. There being no further business, I move to adjourn the 2021 Annual General Meeting. Is there a second?
Jerome James seconds the motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Jerome James seconds the motion. We will now call for a vote. Please enter your vote either in favor or opposed to the motion.
The poll will close in 10 seconds. Madam Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you, Dana. I declare the motion to be carried and declare the 2021 Annual General Meeting closed. Thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.